please read the warning for the Spalding sketch plan review?
Yep. So just point of clarity, both the first two items, your sketch plan reviews, are not hearings. Sketch plan is just the applicant meeting with you to review their plan, and then you will act upon those. But I will read what the agenda has it listed as. So it's sketch plan review, permit 21-400, Emily Spalding and Peter Freilich, requesting a 2-lot subdivision at 49 Bristol Cliffs Drive. So that should cover it. I know. Hey, Emily.
Hey, sorry, Jason should be joining. Apologies.
That's what I thought. Yeah, we're waiting on their consultant, Jason Barnard. He should be on any minute.
Okay.
Do we
I don't know if
want
you've
to
checked-
approve the meetings from last meeting while we're
Yes.
waiting?
We could do that. If people had a chance to review the minutes.
Yes,
Did we get the minutes? I don't see them.
Pardon?
Where we sent the minutes.
yes.
Oh,
No, you had to download the minutes. I think the agenda maybe came, but the minutes did not. So they had to be downloaded from Chris.
I have the minutes.
Oh, now we have Tom. Are other people's connections freezing?
No,
Yeah, I'm good at this point. Oops, I see some chat. So were you going to move forward with the minutes?
I couldn't hear anything anybody was saying, so I'm not, there was some issue about whether people had received the minutes or not?
I got them.
Chris, this is freezing constantly for me. I'm gonna call, I'll try and keep the video, but I'll call you I'll call in by cell right now, okay?
Got it.
so Brenda, do you have a copy of the minutes?
no, where were they downloaded to?
The first message I got from Chris contained the minutes and the agenda.
Sent yesterday.
Oh, I maybe didn't look. Sorry.
That's how I got them too.
I thought
They're
that
attached
package of
together
the mail was
together.
enough.
I would move that we adopt the minutes from the March 9th 2021 meeting.
Ted, you're on mute. You're still muted, Ted.
I believe if you hold your space bar down, it automatically unmutes as long as you hold it down.
Here. Can you hear me now?
There we go. Now you're back, Ted.
Beautiful. So I'll second the request, to approve the minutes.
And Peggy, that was Ted Desmond.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I guess we have to introduce ourselves each time, don't we? Sorry about that.
No, I see your name, just your first name though. So
Yeah,
thank you.
okay. Okay. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Chris?
I missed the introduction.
Tom, you're breaking up terrible.
So sorry.
Tom, I'm not sure.
So Chris, you made a motion to approve the minutes and they have been seconded. So I
Yes.
think the next order of business is a vote up or down. Is that true?
Would be to have a discussion if there's any changes, omissions, or errors.
Any volunteers for discussion on the contents of the minutes from the 9th? I'm seeing shaking heads as an indicator of no.
They look okay to me.
Okay,
So-
I can actually see you now, so
So with that, would the board care to take a vote to accept the minutes as written?
all those in favor?
I'm
All right.
So
So we just
Peggy?
approved the minutes from last week.
all right, does Peggy have the votes? Peggy, Kevin votes yes, Josh votes yes. Ted votes yes. Carol? John Moyers? Brenda? No?
I haven't had a chance to read them.
All
yet.
right, okay, then. So do we have 5 there? Well,
Yep.
I can't see. Tom votes yes. I think that's it. It's everybody that I can see.
The
All right.
the motion is passed. Next order of
So-
business. Go
so
ahead.
do-
I'm going to cede the floor. Go ahead.
All right, so is the Spalding application ready to proceed?
Yeah, Jason was having issues logging in. I'm working with getting him logged in right now.
All right,
Chris, I'm on.
Oh, perfect. Are you under Terry White, maybe?
Nope, I'm under myself.
There you are.
Yeah. Sorry about that, everybody.
okay, Chris, can you read the warning? Or did you already?
I did, but I'll read it again.
No,
for
no, you don't
So-
need to. I couldn't hear things before. That was the one, my screen was frozen, so we don't have to do it twice if you did it.
Nope. But I will,
Okay, so-
as I said to you, Kevin, before, in case you missed it, this is not a hearing.
I know,
Okay,
but we still need to open the meeting. It's a sketch plan review.
yes.
So who's going to be presenting or testifying for the Spalding application? Jason?
Yep, I'll be on board. Emily and her husband are on board as well.
Okay, so, and,
Miss Spalding is here also.
okay, so everybody who's going to address the board tonight on this application, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly swear that I shall tell the whole truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this Development Review Board, under pains or penalty of perjury. So help me God, or I so affirm.
I so affirm.
Okay,
I suffer.
so who's gonna present? You give us a quick summary, Jason. We've got the application material.
Sure, can you, I've got the sketch plan here, but would Chris be able to pull up the sketch plan?
Kevin, do you want that just screen shared?
Yeah,
if you
that's
want a
fine.
Screen share, I can run it through with everybody, Chris.
That sounds good. Let's try that.
Okay.
I'll say, give me 2 seconds.
So this is a sketch plan review. It's just a preliminary informational, informal gathering, meeting. And our principal focus is to determine whether it's a major or minor subdivision and figure out what other review needs to happen, if any, with respect to the subdivision application.
Sure. So I'll start by saying my apologies. I'm trying to balance 3 meetings tonight. This is going to be quite a trick. One in Weybridge, one in Bristol, one in Moncton right after this. So it's great. I'm glad I don't have to drive between meetings. So I want to start by saying I'm happy to represent Emily Freilich, her mom, Margaret Spalding, in regards to this subdivision. The property is located at 49 Bristol Cliffs Drive. The current sketch plan is up on the screen. You can see the existing house. I can't really, maybe Chris can run his pointer, but the existing home is there.
Yeah.
This was part of a previous subdivision back in the early 80s to create this parcel, and it has an EC permit on it. The proposal, as being proposed, lot that's a simple 2-lot subdivision, roughly 6.3 acres in size. The northwesterly corner of the property, if you look at where the existing drive is, there's a red subdivision line starting in from Bristol Cliffs Drive and then proceeding in a westerly direction, more or less using the northwest corner of the parcel to create a 2-acre lot that would be developed with a single-family home. They would share the same access drive, so there'd be no new road cuts, utilize existing utilities. Even insofar as at this point, we're planning to share the water supply well because there's plenty of yield with the well, which we have shown the connection both to the existing house and also the new structure. Soils are really good in this area, as I'm sure you're all aware of, well-drained, Colton sand and gravel soils. The wastewater systems are conventional. So wastewater disposal was always a challenge, but on this site, this is probably one of the easier approaches. So in a nutshell, the way things are laid out was sort of protect the front portion or the easterly portion of the property, which is a nice field with a pond in the lower corner just off the parcel, which Chris can point to, and keep the development sort of clustered, if you will. And that's why we came through and worked with Emily to really do this as a planned unit development to create, a smaller parcel, but using the existing infrastructure.
So there'd be a right of way to share the driveway.
Correct. The right of way is shown on the plat, or not on the plat, excuse me. But we've got a 35-foot right of way shown, or right you can see it's labeled if Chris goes up right where the
Yeah, I see.
driveway entrance.
Yep.
And that does meet the minimum standards required by Bristol
Right.
zoning. But I'm getting some,
That's it.
a little bit of feedback, but
Yeah, it's gone now. At least on my end.
Yep.
So the one, so. You coming in, Chris?
I'm not sure where the feedback's coming from, so I'm not sure if Jason's dropping out.
no, I should be good. It's kind of intermittent, so I don't really hear it.
So this
All the
is
time.
a 2-lot
It's co-
residential.
It's coming from the phone number 349-1900.
Thank you, John.
John using his National Security Agency clearance to help us out here. You've blown your cover, John.
So I will step back a little bit, but the actual, the new parcel lot 2 is less than 2 acres in size.
Right,
And that's, why we're doing it as a PUD.
right. And so a minor subdivision is 3 lots or less if it's residential. So this is a minor, so that's not controversial. This did present an issue, a small technical issue that, as work, these are new regulations for us.
Yep.
And as I was working through the frontage and the dimensional standards for RA2, it's 80 feet from front yard setback, but there's this confusing or ambiguous issue about what's the front yard in a situation like this where you've got a PUD and the houses are working off or facing a right of way.
Mhm.
I think historically we've used that as the road, even though this is bounded by the public highway. I would think when I look at the definition of right of way, I think it would be subject to the 80-foot setback, but it's a PUD and that's a dimensional standard that we can waive. So
Yep.
we're going to, have to deal with that issue repeatedly, and we did under the previous regulations as well. So it looks like it behind the house, it's pretty darn steep, and you've tucked the house back in off the road a fair ways so you can share the well.
It does drop off, and talking with Emily and her husband and her mom, that was sort of the goal, was to get it off the driveway. They could essentially utilize some of that slope if they wanted to for a walkout basement.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
certainly, we do show the 80-foot setback from Bristol Cliffs Drive, and if we have to request a waiver for the proposed right-of-way, obviously it's a shared drive. It's not, it doesn't meet the definition of a private drive, being that it's only serves 2 homes, I believe.
Right. No, I know it's the regulations, the bylaws are a bit ambiguous on this. And when you look at the definition of right of way, it seems to use the drive, the shared drive as a road. But when you look at the definition of road, it talks about a public road. So it's ambiguous, but it doesn't really matter here since it's a PUD, and PUDs are designed for clustering and therefore the waiver of dimensional standards. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Jason or any addition? additional information they'd want to see when this comes back.
Yeah, Brenda has her hand up.
Okay, like you said, this is something new, and I don't quite see how this fits in the definition of planned unit development. It says it's a parcel of land to be developed as a single entity, and it doesn't strike me as though this is a single entity. It strikes me as though this is a simple subdivision where they are using the PUD regulations in hopes of making one lot smaller and the other one larger. So how does this fit
But,
into
well,
the definition for PUD?
they're sharing water and they're sharing a road. PUDs are encouraged in the zone. And so.
So we call it a PUD because it's there, or?
Well,
No, my question is serious.
no, they're sharing things, and they're clustered so that they're not. You've got one lot that's a bit smaller due to topography, primarily, but also you get a relaxation of the dimensional standards as far as setbacks.
That's what I'm wondering. Is this being used just for that, or does it really fit under the definition of a planned unit development?
So if I can just interject for 1 second. So the subdivision, obviously with the road frontage that's here, with the land that is available, this can be done as a standard 2-acre lot. But what you run into is a very poorly laid out strip down the westerly portion of the property, or you end up chewing into the field and essentially giving up or dividing up some of that agricultural land. In my opinion, in order to protect natural resources, in order to sort of stay within the character of Bristol Cliffs Drive, which is a condensed number of homes, it does make a lot of sense to do this as a PUD, to share the infrastructure, to share the driveway, and quite frankly, just not create a lot that really is out of character. You'd end up with a small 50-foot strip along the west boundary to make up the additional acreage, and just doesn't make a lot of sense in this case.
So it's agricultural land. Who is farming it?
Well, the family did have horses at once, and it's open land that's out front.
Josh had his hand up.
Yeah, I mean, Brenda's comment struck me as very pertinent, and I'd like this group to discuss a little bit more what the difference is between a PUD and a non-conforming site such as this, because I think it's an important point, and it kind of makes a loophole in the base regulations. Everything can be potentially a PUD as a non-conforming site. That was my question and point.
Well, if you look at the purposes of PUDs, it's designed to, there's enough room here for two lots that would meet the minimum dimensional requirements. However, doing that would arguably be worse and require more spread out development. So PUD is meant to be a flexible tool. It's nothing untoward about packaging this as a PUD when you've created sort of a unified design through water and sharing the roadway. So the regulations encourage this.
I think the answer is everything couldn't be a PUD. The only thing where you can do a PUD is when the combination of the multiple lots, in this case just two, is enough land that they could actually be subdivided into this use. Or you can make further exceptions. But the good news here is you could easily create conforming lots, and by doing a little bit of sharing, you're doing something logical that allows one lot to be smaller and the other lot to be larger. I think this is right within the spirit of a PUD, although it's not your traditional PUD where you come together and created maybe 4 or 5 or 6 different units on a property and a lot of shared facility. I have no problem with this. I think this is a good use of the PUD.
I mean, if you look at section 609 4D, one of the, and we're not deciding on a PUD tonight, but this is where it's heading. PUD is an effective and unified treatment of the development possibilities of the project site, and the development plan makes appropriate provisions to cluster development and preserve open space, streams, stream banks, steep slopes, wet areas, and unique or man-made features. There are, let's see, 7 other subsections there but that's the one that I think zeroes in on the questions.
So if I can, for one moment, in working with Emily and Peter and her mom, Margaret. So basically we did go through a few options, and I'm not sure who was on the line before in regards to a PUD, but it can be done with a conventional or by right subdivision, if you will. It meet all the setbacks, meet all the dimensional requirements, and in fact meet the lot acreage. However, in looking at this, we just thought it made a lot more sense, and hats off to Peter and Emily in saying, hey, let's try to think outside the box, and we can be there, take care of my mom, have her own parcel, but we don't need to carve this up where we, put a subdivision line way out into the middle of the field or make a narrow strip. I mean, in terms of doing this, a lot of thought and effort went into actually looking how this parcel was laid out.
Can I make a comment? Could this be a PUD if they didn't share the common drive? Is that a requirement of this to be a PUD?
Not a requirement of this, no.
No.
It's a PUD is supposed to be a unified development, so this is one aspect of how these 2 parcels are part of a unified development, but it's not a requirement.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to echo Brenda's concerns. I mean, and I chalk this up to my inexperience, perhaps, but it just doesn't seem like adding one house is a PUD. I don't know when the original house was built, but my notion of a PUD is that it's a cohesive plan development, maybe phased over time and that sort of thing. But it seems like I would worry about the precedent setting nature of this request, which is just, it's one more house. And I don't know what's planned about adding one more house to a house that's already built. So that's not in any way to prejudice this application. I just worry about the precedent of it if we do it here.
So the history, so just to offer some input on that, John, this is a fairly standard practice. And what the intent here is not to create a 2-acre lot, because they have the dirt to do it. The problem is by doing it, it creates a poorly laid out lot that'll have a finger down the west side of the parent's parcel. The PUD was designed to make sure that you didn't exceed density and that you maximize it, because the other option they could do is apply for a standard 2-lot subdivision and then apply for a waiver on the lot size and the setback requirement. Instead, you take the PUD and it's combining those 2 processes, the subdivision and the waiver process, into one to create one large lot with its best utilization of those lands. And I feel that that is what is being achieved here.
But this is 2 lots. They're asking for a subdivision to create 2 lots, not 1 large lot, 2 lots. 2 different
Right, so
houses that can be sold separately and whatever, and that's fine.
Right. So most PUDs include small lots, and that's the nature of a PUD is you can create smaller lots to leave more space open, which is what you're seeing in the frontage along Lower Notch Road and Bristol Cliffs Road here. That's the intent and feel behind a PUD, is to create it gives the developer the flexibility to create smaller lots and larger lots and maximize the correct topography of a site versus just carving out 2 acres. It's designed.
I get that, but this seems like the latter, just carving out some land, not the former. To me, P and PUD means planned.
And the other thing is, the other lot is over 4 acres. So what if, is there anything to stop that 4 acres from, they're declaring this is another PUD. And so we have another house on there somewhere.
Non-conforming.
Person A goes sells their house, and person B sells their house, and person C sells their house. Now we've got 3 little houses on 3 separate lots, some of which are smaller than 2 acres.
Well, there's no,
In other words,
people selling their all people can sell their lots. So they're, I'm not sure how that adds anything or is a problem. Yes, there's over 4 acres on the other lot, but we take each application as it comes. We're not bound by what happened with other applications, or even what happened in this area. We take them as they come and on their individual merits. There's really not a precedent problem to worry about.
But this is the precedent, because this is the first one I think we've dealt with.
Yeah,
and therefore,
well,
we're still working it out. What do we mean? Do we really want to them to be able to sell this 1 point something acre land and then divide up the other one? Whereas something like, I don't know what it's called, Broadview Estates, the roads all stay there, and the setup is all set up
well,
there. People can't go.
the minimum lot size is 2 acres. So yes, theoretically in the parcel that remains over 4 acres, yes, they could subdivide by a standard subdivision.
So even if they added the additional acreage, Brenda, to lot 2,
yeah,
the main parcel, the remaining acreage, could still be subdivided at a later date.
It could, and that's why I'm saying, my question is, how is this different from why is this a PUD and not an ordinary subdivision? That's my question, really.
Yes, it's a PUD. They're seeking relief from the minimum lot size under these circumstances, and the definition of PUD is 1 or more lots. It doesn't need to be big. We got 2 lots, that meets that piece. Tracts or parcels to be developed as a single entity, the plan for which may propose any authorized combination of density, intensity, transfers or increases, as well as mixing of land uses. This plan, as authorized, may deviate from the regulation requirements that are otherwise applicable to the area in which it is located with respect to lot size, bulk, type of dwelling or building use, density, intensity, lot.
So, I mean, had the definition had said, in order to do a PUD, you have to have a minimum of 3 or 4 lots, we wouldn't have come in with a PUD. It would have been a standard by right subdivision. But with the definition of 1 to 2 lots,
1 or more,
that's the proposal, was to come through so that it made the most sense in terms of how the division line was made and where the acreage.
Can I ask when the original house was built?
Maybe Emily would probably know that better than myself.
Yeah.
My mom could speak to it more, but Mom, was it 76?
Yeah, the
Kevin,
point
I-
is that the point to me is that it is built, and Kevin, in that language that you read,
get that.
it's forward looking. It says to be developed, so that the proposal for a PUD in my mind, and please set me straight if I'm off on this, I'm happy to be corrected, but in my mind, it looks forward, and there's a cohesive development concept that's being implemented, and in order to pull it off and have higher density and that sort of thing, some of the setbacks, for example, or other requirements are waived. But to me, this is like unplanned. This is like looking backwards and saying, oh, well, let's call it a PUD now. It just, it's why not just do it why not just divide the land, subdivide it, and build on it? Why call it a PUD?
Rob has his hand up.
Go ahead, Rob. Can't see you. There you are. You got on mute.
Yeah, I was getting there. So I just want to say, as we were working through the town plan, I'm a member of the planning commission also. This is kind of the situation that planned unit development is meant for, to be able to use this to relax those standards and fit things in where they may not be able to typically fit because of the topography or the physical features or what has already been developed in the area. So just as kind of an aside of, the intent of PUDs, just wanted to throw that out there.
John, to your point, I think it is forward-looking because it's proposing changes from what's there now. There's no requirement in a PUD that all the land be undeveloped. We have a single house on a 6+ acre lot, and the proposal is to develop that going forward in this manner. So I don't think it's backward looking.
I mean, I'll just say from a design standpoint, we could easily pop in a road cut right off of Notch Road and put 2 houses right out in that field, and do this as a standard subdivision. But in my opinion, this is a much more tasteful way to actually create that second parcel and use the PUD language. I mean, we've got the soils, we've got the acreage in the road frontage. It does preserve the character of the field out front. It does push the house back into the tree line. There are no new access points to come off of Lower Notch Road. It really makes a lot of sense as to how it is laid out in terms of with how the parcel is subdivided and developed, in my opinion.
Any other questions or comments, Josh? No? Yes?
Yeah, I just want to thank Jason and the applicants for bearing with us. We're kind of learning, a couple of us, including myself, are kind of learning about PUDs a little bit more. I think I'm willing to accept the way it is now, given, I'm coming in more aligned with Chris. I wish the way that the regulations was written was a little bit clearer in the difference between a non-conforming site and a PUD, because it opens a dangerous precedent and maybe that's the intent of the regs. I'm not quite sure what isn't a PUD when the site is too small. I realize mathematically we have to reach a benchmark, but
well,
go ahead.
I think you can't. I think PUDs usually you're looking at there's enough land overall, but you're
Right.
cutting it up in a different way. A PUD is not a way to create a bunch of non-conforming lots without having other acreage in common or something like that. So
yeah, and I understand that in aggregate,
Okay.
the site needs to conform, and I'm coming to understand that now. Thank you.
So I would, if this had been a proposal to hack out 1.5 acres in the southeast corner, I could see where there was no shared driveway. It was just thrown out in the middle of that field. There wasn't a lot of thought put into it. They're not trying to maximize the usage of the existing infrastructures. Then I would say that was not planned. This was planned. This was, they based it on an existing driveway for a boundary line, trying to utilize an existing well so they can share facilities, keep wide open green space, which is a big promotion in our state. And they tucked it in right against the hillside. This is PUD 101.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
except I have one question for you, Chris, and
Go
for you,
ahead.
Kevin. I'm not so sure
I can't hear
that
you.
once you use a
Yeah,
you use a PUD concept for the two lots that are here, that you don't have to use that same PUD if they ever did want to do anything with the larger lot. To me, that it's in the PUD once we treat it that way, and I don't think they can just go willy-nilly subdividing off that larger lot without going back to this PUD that we've now.
no, I think that's right.
So
Yeah,
I think those
I wasn't
that are
suggesting
worried
otherwise.
about another subdivision off of the larger lot, I think they have to go within the PUD because we've now made these two lots a PUD.
No, I would agree. I was talking more hypothetically about the worries that, this is a precedent in other cases. People can just carve it up. I agree. If we set this up as a PUD and they wasn't a proposal to have a further subdivision of the bigger lot, yes, it'd have to meet the requirements of the PUD and be integrated in some fashion, even if they were more than 2 acres. So I agree with your point on that, but my main point was
Especially with that, knowing that, again, I don't think those Brenda and John that are a little bit concerned that PUDs are normally more forward-looking. I agree with them. That is the way they are normally done. But I also believe this is an excellent use of the PUD ordinance to preserve the best aspects of this property and share certain things in common. So I think it's not a misuse of the ordinance. It's just a good creative use of a smaller lot situation.
I'm just having trouble imagining anyone who wanted to create a smaller lot that was below the zoning minimum required, just tagging it with PUD and done, right?
Well, I don't think I think in a normal circumstance, what they would do, had they not had the topographic and other restrictions that are appropriate here, they would have just carved out the 2-acre lot. It would they as they correctly said, they could easily do that. They didn't do it in order to preserve the land in a very logical way. I think they did this for the reasons that they told us that they're suggesting. So works for me.
Yeah, well, and we take each application as it comes. This doesn't tie our hands or set us down some path that was my main point, Tom, was this doesn't send us on some railroad track to approving future smaller lots on this development or any other development.
I agree with you. And what Chris said before, I agree with that as well. If this was an 1.5-acre lot out in the other end of the field, I'd be absolutely against it.
Me
but
too.
I think this is a good PUD because I think these lines are drawn very logically, and they are sharing some aspects of the property. Therefore, I think it's a good use of the ordinance. And I think we end up with one smaller lot, but that lot is sharing some of the things with the larger lot. That larger lot has now encumbered itself with PUD status. So that's why I made the point I made a minute ago. I don't think that lot is freely subdividable. I think if they came back in for another subdivision on that, we'd say, oh, no, wait a minute. You've got certain common shared use with that other lot that's 1.42 acres, and therefore we're not going to necessarily let you do that.
No, I agree. I think one of the primary functions or attributes of a PUD is the ability to create some smaller lots and cluster development in order to preserve open space, maximize open space that would otherwise disappear if you subdivided the property according to what's automatically allowed without special PUD status. And I think this proposal does that, and that's a real benefit.
I just don't know how, if we approve this sort of thing in this instance, that we don't undermine our ability to turn somebody down later for a different proposal that doesn't seem well advised, but they might say, well, hey, you approved this other one. That's the sort of precedent that I'm thinking of. But
Well, that's my, I think, is that John? I can't see.
that was John, me, yeah.
Yeah, so John, that's the point I'm trying to get at. We're never bound by what we did in a legal sense or in a moral sense by what we did on a previous application. Each application is unique, so we're not boxing ourselves in somehow. Our decisions are going to be based on the specifics of each application, and every site is going to be different. There's going to be different concerns. So somebody could say, yeah, you approved that one, so you need to approve me. The answer to that is no, at a practical level, but also no as a legal matter. That's going nowhere.
Kevin,
Kevin's absolutely right.
Kevin, are we going to vote on this tonight?
Well, no, tonight, well, the only thing we're going to agree on is that it's a minor subdivision. And so I'll make that motion because it fits the definition of minor, but that's all we do. And this is just sketch plan review. And if there were other things that we thought needed to be reflected on the site plan or with the PUD, this is our opportunity to make suggestions. This is to have dialogue with the applicant in order to get the final package in a form that will have the best chance of getting approved and have the information that we think we're going to need.
Well, I'm very careful. I'm very comfortable with the explanation I've heard from you, Kevin, and what I've heard from Tom as well. That's educated me on this matter, and I propose, that we move forward here.
Yeah, are there any other questions from the board or on this? Because we've got a pretty full plate for tonight. Jason, do you have anything further to add?
I don't. I appreciate the board's time and looking at this, and I think a lot of time went into this, where at the end of the day, the acreage density is there for 3 lots. I think it's well thought out and planned to sort of keep things out of the way and using existing infrastructure.
Okay, given the definition that I read, and I'll read it again, a minor subdivision, that's one of our decisions, is because the process is different. It's more streamlined for a minor than a major, but a minor subdivision is any residential subdivision containing 3 lots or less. This is 2, so it doesn't seem to be any debate about that. It's so does everyone agree? Right? Does anyone disagree that it's a minor subdivision? Okay, so
I'm good.
I'll just move that we designate it as a minor subdivision, and that way we'll have a clear record in the minutes. Somebody second? Josh seconds. All those in favor of designating this proposal as a minor subdivision, say aye or give thumbs up to Peggy. Does anybody abstain? Does anybody vote in the negative? Okay, so it's unanimous, Peggy, for how many people we are at this point. We've got to move on. Thanks, Spaldings.
Thank you.
We're gonna go to the Stony Hill application now. Chris, you want to read the
Thanks, everyone.
and review, right? Excuse me?
I think that was just Jason thanking everyone for their time.
Oh, okay. So this is sketch plan review as well, right, Chris?
Yes, that is correct. So your next item is sketch plan review, permit 21401, Stony Hill Properties, requesting a 4-lot subdivision at Firehouse Drive.
Okay, who's going to present for the town or for the applicant?
I will. My name is Jamie Simpson, and I'm
Okay.
with Green Mountain Engineering.
All right. Jamie, you raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalties of perjury that the evidence you shall give before this development review board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear and affirm.
All right. See, Ted, you didn't even have to remind me. I'm 2 for 2.
I'm ready. I am.
I know
waiting.
you are. I can
I'm
feel
waiting
it.
with bated breath.
I know. I can feel the crosshairs on the back of my neck. All right, Jamie, walk us through. You gave us a good overview, but this is sketch plan review.
Sure.
And like the previous application, folks, our principal duty here is to determine whether it's a major or a minor. And just as the other application was definitive on that, this one is also definitive because a major subdivision is any commercial or industrial project, and this is a commercial project. So there's no controversy on that it's going to be a major subdivision and have to go through the major subdivision process. Okay, Jamie?
Kevin, would you like me to share this site plan on the screen as well?
Yes, please.
Jamie, if you want to start, go ahead. I'll pull it up here in a moment for you.
Sure. So this application is for a sketch plan review of the Stony Hill Business Park. This lot area is located on Firehouse Drive out behind the new fire station. To the left side of your page, which continues on to the top portion of the page that you can't see, that is West Street and Vermont 116 and Route 17. So a part of this project involves the extension of Firehouse Drive from where it terminates currently at the end of the firehouse location. So that would extend to the south to the property line of the Stony Hill Business Park and then continue essentially through the center of the lot. And then terminating between where it's labeled Lot C and Lot D. One thing we should mention is that this map that you're looking at right now is the proposed subdivision of that property. So there would be a total of 4 lots. Lot A would be for the building A specific. Lot B would be for a second building, Lot B, building B, and then Lot C for third building, building C. Lot A, we do kind of have a prospective tenant or buyer for that lot, so that footprint does look different than the other 2 buildings that are on the site because that has been designed specifically for that tenant. The other 2 buildings on Lot B and Lot C, those are future buildings that are not designed yet. So we don't have clear dimensions on those buildings, but those footprints are drafted to basically create a lot footprint that could be developed. It might be smaller, it could be slightly larger, but that's essentially the plan. So with this map, you'll see that there's a lot of infrastructure and planning that's gone into this. And I'm not sure, Chris, do you want to switch to a different site plan or do you think we could stick with this one?
I think this one for the purposes of tonight would be the best option. It won't muddy the waters much more than, I
Okay.
think we get into the large plan, there's a lot more detail that's not necessary for this step.
Sure.
Jamie,
So,
Jamie,
yes,
can you just give us the acreages for lots A, B, and C, please?
yes.
And,
So
well, and D too.
let me check
Because
on
the square footages that you're showing on this plan is, does that pertain to the building or is that for the whole lot?
So the square footage is shown, that's for the building footprint specifically.
That's
And
what I understood. Yep.
The acreages are right here on the map.
Yeah, could you just read them? It's so small that I can't read it.
That makes two of us. I had to zoom in. So lot A is 2.42, lot B is 1.95, lot C is 1.89, and lot D is 3.41.
Great. I just wanted Peggy to be able to have those for the minutes, so that's very helpful. Keep going, Jamie.
thank you. And to describe Lot D, because I kind of skipped over that, but Lot D is going to be a fourth common infrastructure lot that will be owned equally shared by the three owners of Lot A, B, and C. So that lot contains all the stormwater and wastewater up in the upper left corner where Chris's cursor is now, as well as some of the archaeological preserved lands to the southern area.
Jamie, can I ask a question? If I'm reading this right, there's no dedicated street. The street itself is just divided up among the property owners of Lot A, B, and C?
So the way it will happen is Firehouse Drive will be extended and essentially bisecting the larger lot. And then the property lines as shown on this subdivision do extend to the center line of that Firehouse Drive extension. And there will be 100-foot wide right-of-way, which is kind of shaded in the darker zone that will, give the town access and maintenance rights to that street.
And the town will take over that right of way?
Correct.
So that will actually be deeded to the town ultimately?
That's correct.
Okay. And the town has said, okay, they'll do that, right? They'll be responsible for snow plowing and all the rest.
That's right.
Okay. That may be totally clear, but with this plan and that overlay, I really can't see that. But thank you for explaining it to me.
Sure. Yeah, we do have some other detailed plans, and like Chris said, for this specific application, this is probably adequate, but you'll definitely, on other plan sets, does show that level of detail.
Okay.
So
It's a deep, but I'm just out of curiosity, will there be fire hydrants in that property?
there will be one at the very end of the water line extension that's located in front
Perfect.
of building C. Correct.
Okay,
And the
thank you.
firehouse is close by.
Yeah, we know the firehouse is close, but water's a good thing, even if you have a close by firehouse.
Yeah, and there's also a fire hydrant located right here at the back corner of the fire department property as well.
Yep.
So I have a question. Are there going to be further lots developed on this property, or is this it?
This is full build out. This is it.
Okay.
So what I will also point out is that there was a lot of thought gone into the number of parking spaces, and you'll see parking lots to the north of Lot B, or to the north of the label Lot B. You'll also see a parking lot in between Lot B and Lot C. And then there's another parking lot that is a small one to the south of Building A, near Chris's cursor now. There's additional parking to the east of Building A that's on street. It's perpendicular parking along that street run right there. There's some street parking along the firehouse extension north of the property line. That is parallel parking along that segment. And then there's even a small between Lot D and Lot C label. There's a small 5 or 6, I think it's a 5-bay parking lot right there as well for intermittent customers and short-term parking. As far as water goes, there will be a water line extension coming from the northern property line on Firehouse Drive. Currently, there's an existing water line with a T connection that stops there. The existing water line connection continues through an easement along the north border of Lot A, and then around Lot A essentially, and then all the way down, you can see to the lower left of your page, there's an easement closer to the West Street, or closer to the Vermont 116. If you pan down, Chris, gone down a little further, little down over to the, go to building A, and then slightly left, right, a little more left, right there. That is the water line, existing water line that goes down to Lover's Lane and serves the Woodland Apartments development. So coming from Firehouse Drive at the northern part, the northern boundary, there'll be a water line extension onto the Stony Hill properties all the way to essentially where building C is, where there'll be terminates with a fire hydrant. Correct, right where Chris is. As far as sewer, it's an on-site treatment disposal system. There's a small collection system that starts between Lot B and Lot C. And then there's a collection main with 2 manholes that runs from east to west, all the way down to the southern tip of Lot A. And then right there, you'll see there are some septic tanks and a pump station, as well as a valve pit, which then distributes the effluent to the 4 different disposal fields up in that lot where Chris's cursor is now. The purpose of that is to have 4 different fields which are rotated on a regular basis to more evenly distribute the discharge.
Okay, interesting.
And then stormwater, all the impervious has been planned to be collected into catch basins and then conveyed underground through a network of pipes. For the most part, it all discharges to the west of Lot A. You'll see a shaded portion there. That is a former gravel pit, which unfortunately has plenty of gravel still beneath it. And so it actually works out to be a perfect infiltration basin. So that's how we plan for that to be utilized. And I would say that I would add that all of these infrastructure components have their own respective permits, you know, wastewater permits, stormwater permits, Act 250 permits. They have all been submitted at this stage because final design has gotten to that level of detail where it was sufficient enough to submit for those permits. And I think as far as aesthetics go, there's lots of trees and bushes and screening planned to help greenify the site and not make it just an open, flat site. It's going to break it up nicely. In addition to in the southern area where Chris's cursor is, that is going to be preserved land. It's an archaeologically sensitive area, so no development can occur within that shaded portion. So that'll pretty much off limits as far as development is concerned.
So Jamie, does the topography, I don't have that map open, does it property drop as you head south from the fire station, or are these buildings going to be roughly at the same elevation as the fire station?
I don't recall what the fire station finished floor elevation is, but these three buildings are going to be set fairly close to one another. You'll see the finished floor elevations labeled on building A is 568, building B is 567.50, and then building C is at 570. And that was dictated for building C by that archaeologically sensitive area not being able to grade any of that. So
Yeah,
building,
I just couldn't recall the topography
It's-
behind the fire station.
It's basically a flat run. I mean, eyeball it, Kevin, it's flat from the fire station out to lot C and D.
Okay,
with the
Thanks.
exception, I would say that Lot A is slightly elevated, and that elevation is planned to be cut down to be more in line with Lot B and Lot C. And topographically, to the east of Lot B and C, that's a steep drop off down to the New Haven River. And then to the west and south of Lot D, that is a more gradual slope, but still a continuous slope for a majority of that portion down to Lover's Lane.
all right, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jamie, you're allowed to put a parking lot in the archaeological area, is that correct?
So allowed is a strong word. So basically, we've had some discussions with VDHP, the Vermont Division of Historic Preservation.
Yep.
And that parking lot is shown only as future parking as necessary should the use of building B and building C require more parking than what we've shown. Then we would have to go back with the Vermont Division of Historic Preservation, ask special permission to install that parking lot. It would only be GeoGrid, which is a plastic soil retention cells. So basically like a plastic grid that you fill with soil.
Permeable pavers, yep,
That's
gotcha.
correct, exactly. And so that would be the allowable use for that. But again, it would require further investigation for archaeological artifacts and permission from VDHP.
Yeah, that's interesting. It also seems, and this is outside of this group's purview, but it seems like your excavation for building C may also require a cutback that's in your archaeological sensitive area. So you're probably well aware of that, though.
We are. So that building C envelope was drawn carefully to allow for a little bit of over excavation without interfering with the archaeological sensitive boundaries. And those boundaries would need to be fenced and marked clearly during construction so that there was no disturbance in that zone.
That's gonna be hard to do with your excavators.
They're gonna have to figure it out because that's the limits we're given.
And that was a fair amount of negotiation to get to work around those limitations, but they were very reasonable, and this was the best we could come up with.
Cool, thank you.
Just out of curiosity, what have you found in the archaeological sensitive area? Couple of arrowheads or?
One. Sorry, Jamie, I had to do it.
That's fine.
No, lots of bits they call lithic debitage, chips from making
Oh,
things, and a singular arrowhead.
Oh,
But the interesting thing, as they've determined that arrowhead is what, Jamie, do you remember, 6,000 years old or something? It's ancient.
Yeah, I don't recall the exact age. Sorry.
okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Is there any discussion to be warranted about any view corridors coming up 116 and coming up towards Mount Abe, where we're now having a series of leach fields and taking out those series of trees?
So if you're coming up 116, headed, I guess, west or to the east from the west, you'll note that that particular bit of land has very young growth trees on it, not very tall, probably 20 feet at the most. And also it's actually a lowered terrace. I know you don't have topography on this map, but you would see that, yeah, the lot to the right of that, that is Nelson, that lot is elevated from this lower terrace, if you will, on this shaded purple lot. So as far as views and blockages, I don't think you'll have very negative impacts from the wastewater development.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Well, I can tell you that I absolutely think this is a major subdivision, so no question on that. And I love this project. I'm a long time coming, and this looks like very well planned to me. It's very solid.
Thank you.
So Jamie, we've got some, you got a heavy breather for the building on lot A, but you don't really know yet what type of use it's going to be, other than it's going to be something commercial?
Correct. You know, as far as getting all these permits in place and trying to move this project ahead, we had to provide some kind of basis, you know, for these
Yep.
permits and some number of impervious. So this was our best shot to, if you will, provide the town with large enough square footage of buildings so that a business doesn't outgrow the community and have to move out of
Yeah.
town.
This is a response to the autumn harp problem.
Exactly.
And Danforth and Vermont Coffee Company and NRG, and the list is long.
Bees, wraps.
Mixed district. So all the four lots are larger than the 1 acre minimum.
Is it 15,000?
Well, that's for residential.
Okay.
You know, so, but I do note, and this is informational. So as we go forward, it looks to me, given the size of the building, you're going to need conditional use review because light industry class 2 is, the buildings are bigger than that. So that's something to keep in mind.
Correct.
That's down the road a piece.
It is. About 2 weeks.
No, Chris can't get the notice out that quickly.
I already did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, so,
Oh, man.
so just to give you fair warning, in 2 weeks, there'll be a conditional use request for the light industrial use for this parcel, and for preliminary and possible final approval that evening of this subdivision.
For A or for A, B, and C?
It'll be for A, B, and C.
But we don't know anything about B and C.
For the conditional use, yeah, you could condition that they need to come in they have to fall
Okay.
in their building envelopes. But at a minimum, it'll be Lot A. I put it as a conditional use light industrial is how it's.
Well, we'll
warned.
cross that bridge when we come to it.
You got it.
So if we approve the conditional use with these building envelopes, if they stay within the building envelope, do they have to come back?
No.
I think, yeah, okay. I'm okay with that. I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing about conditional use is it depends on, in some way, on what use is being made. And so if that presumes some level of information.
Right. So in all reality, I think what'll end up happening is Lot A's conditional use will be the primary discussion that evening. The subdivision, the building lots will be what'll be approved. The conditional use will be for Lot A, and as Lots B and C get developed, they would come in for conditional use for those individual lots later on in the future.
Yep, okay. All right, so we'll take that up in 2 weeks. So that's good that people have thought about that. Anything further or questions from the board for Jamie?
Good job.
You have anything further for us, Jamie? taking care of it all.
No, I think we have a great setup here. So I'm looking forward to, in the couple of weeks, having another discussion.
Okay, I'll move that we designate this project as a major subdivision.
Second.
Any debate about that? Anybody want me to read that definition again? It's commercial, so that's all there is to it. It's a major. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? John, I don't know if you're frozen or you voted in favor. Okay, good. You froze and I couldn't tell where your vote was going. Okay, so that takes care of Stony Hill. Thanks, folks. We've got to move on.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. So now this is the continuation of the PUD for Mr. Fuller's project. At least that's how I think of it.
Yep. Would you like me to read that as well, Kevin?
Yes, I would, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so your next item is 4A, permit 16-01 PRD-amend, Robert Fuller at 93 North Street, parcel 20-51-12.1 is requesting a site plan and PRD amendment to add 6 garages for Bristol Unified Development Regulations, Article 3, Section 391.
Okay, Kevin Brennan, there you are. And Mr. Fuller, I see. Anyone else going to be submitting testimony on behalf of this application? Okay, Mr. Fuller, raise your hand. Do you solemnly swear that the evidence you shall get before the zoning board of adjustment, swear or affirm, shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Kevin, you want to walk us through?
Actually, Robert is going to, I'm going to sort of just pay attention and listen. Robert wanted to present, so I'll defer to Robert.
Very well. Go ahead.
What were the issues from the last meeting? You said that you had some concern about whether or not this request to the change of the site plan was going to fit within the PUD rules because it had been approved 3 years ago under the PRD rules?
Not so much. At least my concern was that this was a site plan amendment. So the previous site plan, the existing site plan was tied to something, and that something was a PRD, I guess. And so we needed to understand how, if and how the change in the site plan affected the underlying permit itself. That was the issue.
Am I expected to answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, we had little information about what the parameters of the existing permit were, so we couldn't tell how this site plan was consistent or inconsistent with that, and therefore whether any changes were needed with respect to the existing approval. That was a mystery.
So we have approval for 6 2-bedroom homes on 3 acres of land. We got that over 3 years ago.
Yeah, I understand that.
So the only change is to add potentially, not necessarily, but to have the right to add, if the people who buy the homes want to, a 24 by 24 2-car garage in their designated parking space. That's the only difference.
I think part of our problem before was we didn't have what the rules were, and we were sort of dropped in the middle of this. Now we've been sent the rules. And from my point of view, it made it much clearer. The now that we have the bylaws of the Bristol cottage community and so forth. That was very helpful. He sent that.
So, yeah, all the declaration and the bylaws have been forwarded, and the amendment to the bylaws, which explains how the garages will be built on common land, not on owned land, and not part of the building envelope that the houses will be built on.
Right, but what the submissions make clear is that these garages are limited common elements, which is appropriate, that we didn't have that information last time.
So we forwarded all that information to Chris.
Limited common elements are common land that are allocated to the exclusive use of one of certain specified unit holders or unit owners.
Say that again, Kevin.
A limited common element is common land that is allocated to this exclusive use of one or more unit owners. So it's still it's a type of common land. So that was one of the pieces that we were lacking last time.
So that's already been established because each living unit has its own parking space and has exclusive use of that parking space. So all
You missed my point, but keep going.
Robert, I think Kevin's saying that you've answered one of the questions, and that was, what are your documents? What are the bylaws? What is the declaration that defines who owns what and how it is all going to be managed? And you've done that by providing the integrated declaration of bylaws and then the First Amendment.
Right. The understanding we had before was unit owners own this little building envelope and everything else is common land. Well, the garages was inconsistent with that. At least we weren't sure how it fits in. So now with that ownership regime, now we understand that piece. It looks like their garages are roughly within the designated parking areas, as at least drawn on the original map.
Kevin, would you look at the updated site plan shared?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Okay.
Somebody going to put up the site plan?
I'm working on it.
Okay,
2
thank you.
seconds. I had to pull it up first. Now I can share it for you. And that. I believe, yes. So this is the updated submitted request for change site plan. The garages are located here, 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 and here.
And one more.
Whoops, and here. Sorry. Thank you, Robert.
Okay, so we're dealing with site plan review here, which is section 394. The board may impose appropriate conditions and safeguards with respect to the adequacy of traffic access, circulation, parking for vehicles, pedestrians, landscaping, screening, exterior lighting, signs, hours of operation, design criteria for the exterior of the building, and protecting the utilization of renewable energy resources. That's what 394 says. And are we in an overlay district here, Chris? We outside the downtown review. I think we are outside that, right?
You are outside of that. That is correct.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But we're back to we're operating under something very similar to a PUD. PRD is it's like having a Macintosh and a Delicious. They're both apples. And what the PRD, which we don't have anymore, enabled the applicant to do is to cluster, just like we talked about in the first proceeding tonight, cluster developments, waive setbacks, those kinds of things as part of as an overall plan for the site. So all those
So I would simply ask Robert, what is your design review criteria for the exterior of the building?
It's written in the bylaws. It talks about
Okay.
roof pitch, it talks about material, exterior material.
Yeah.
The idea is to, make traditionally shaped. I think the minimum roof pitch is 812, except with a dormer. Could be a little bit less.
Article 13 of the declaration talks about the steering committee's ability to approve and sets out some standards.
So I know it gives some flexibility. So could they all look different, or are they all going to look the same or consistent with the other buildings?
I'd actually prefer if there was a little variation. I think it would be architecturally more interesting rather than having them all be exactly the same.
Okay.
But of a similar style and consistent with the vernacular of the village of Bristol.
In that vein, this is John Moyers. In that vein, would the owners would determine, just as they're determining what their houses are going to look like, what the garages would look like?
That's true.
And
With some oversight, once we have a steering committee, with some oversight from the steering committee.
and who's
Prior
responsible?
to that, with oversight from me. Because
What
I
if
have
somebody?
I have aesthetic opinions, and I'm not going to let people just build anything. They're going to have to tell me ahead of time, and if we can't. Well, I don't expect to not agree on it. All the people that I've talked to that are interested in this property and this development, I would say are kindred spirits. They all have the same goals that I do. Many of them are looking at this as their forever home. They're downsizing from some other location or some other larger house, and they want to be in part of a little community like this where they can age in place. And so I'm not expecting there to be any serious disagreements about aesthetics.
And who does the buck stop with when it comes to actually breaking ground on a house and, if approved, a garage? If there's something that's not right, say it's larger than the one that's permitted in this process.
Well, they're limited, and they understand the people that have bought these lots or are going to buy them understand that we're limited by our septic capacity. And so we have approval for 6 2-bedroom homes. And the homes have to fit within the building envelope, 45 feet by 60 feet. Most people, the house that's there now, the first one that got built, originally was going to be a story and a half and have a smaller footprint. But then it was pointed out to me that people who are aging in place want to live on one floor. They don't want to have to go up and down stairs. So I expect most of the houses, and there's another one being constructed now, that's the same basic setup. Because it's a sloping site, there is a walkout basement, but it's not living space. It's mostly storage space.
So John, to answer your question, when these are constructed, in order to get an occupancy permit, it goes through my office. And if they have exceeded the requirements, bedroom specifically, is this site is very bedroom specific, needs a septic. They wouldn't get their certificate of occupancy, i.e. they're not gonna get their mortgage. And I would not want to be in that homeowner's predicament at that point in time. So the buck sort of stops in my office, same with design and same with placement of those buildings when they go to do it. Like on the map here, the current structure that's shown looks like it's actually pointed north-south. They stayed within their building envelope and moved to east-west more. It still stayed within their building envelope, but it met the topography better. So during discussions, it still fits within the building envelope square, just not the sort of shaded picture that you see here of the estimated area where the house should be, if that helps.
I just, I mean, is there an authority, like, as these lots sell, this is not being built out by Robert. These are lots being sold by Robert, and they have strictures on the building envelope size, east and west, so to speak, and there's height restrictions in the zone. But the garages are on common land, so I'm just wondering where the buck stops if somebody, build something that's 25 feet tall as a garage or something, or wants 3 bays or.
No,
They're still gonna need to get a building permit.
yeah. So every structure that goes on there, John, or anybody on the board, will require an individual building permit for every physical structure. So it does go through my office, which would review this site plan. And this is part of why this actually ended up on your plate was Mr. Fuller asked if site A, which is where the current house is, could build one. And I said, not yet. You need approval. So very aware of the site plans when we do PUDs like this. Again, if they want to build a 25 by 25, they've got to come back to you and ask for a change. What you're permitting here is a 24 by 24 garage. Anything beyond that would have to come back to your board for approval.
Well, yeah, and I think I want to go back to my point for the board that this is a revision to the existing underlying permit, and this is showing where things will be. You can't, they're sort of inextricably intertwined. So there's all the criteria that we can have the authority to consider. We have it here. We're in case folks have forgotten, the majority of this development is in the HDR district, and all the buildings are in HDR. And so that is page 22 of our regs. I'll just read the objective and guidelines of the HDR district because I think that informs our overall view here. It is the purpose of this district to allow for continued high-density residential and compatible small business uses within the neighborhoods extending north and east from downtown Bristol. This district is largely developed with single-family homes, and it is the intent of these regulations to protect the character and maintain the district's traditional settlement patterns and residents' quality of life. So that's what this district is all about, and we have a bunch of concerns about or potential things to think about. Tom was raising them at the previous meeting about how this amendment and change to the existing underlying permit to have these buildings on common land, but held as limited common facilities, how that fits in. So this is our opportunity to explore those things. And we have conditioning authority. If there's something that the board collectively wants to see, regardless of whether it's in the existing documents, the board has the authority to impose conditions. So I'm not suggesting that we need to. I want the board to be aware that this is our, the essence of our function as a board is to look at proposals and make collective judgments about whether things fit or whether things fit well enough, how they're going to affect the neighborhood around, and that's specific for HDR anyway. And if we think collectively tweaks are needed, and we vote and put conditions in, or we don't.
Thank you. I would jump right to something that's in the package that we were sent, which is Mr. Bouvier's letter. And I have to say, I'm sympathetic that, this is kind of a big change from the original plan, and it's a lot more building coverage. And I asked last meeting that if, how it might have affected the prior zoning board's consideration of this project if, say, it had included this current plan that we have up here with the garages. Would that have changed anything in how it was received or approved at that point? I understand we're under different rules now, so maybe not, but I wonder what you think about that.
Who are you asking?
The group. I just wonder.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I just wonder if there's any similar feeling to what Mr. Bouvier expressed in his letter, that it just kind of feels cramped.
Well, I'll articulate my personal struggle on this. Is it's gone from 6 buildings to 12, and granted they're garages, but it's clustered, but that's a more intensive use. It just is. Doesn't mean it's inappropriate. But now we have to think about whether that's something that we're okay with. The site plan is where those buildings go. But there's no getting around the fact that this changes the original, the existing permit, and that's okay, but we have to recognize that it does.
Kevin, I got to second your concern there. I don't buy the explanation that simply that a parking spot existing in a certain spot justifies a garage then later coming in terms of density and aesthetic. I could see a path to accepting this additional infrastructure if I could be convinced that it's along the lines of our first conversation of the nature of a PUD and whether or not it adds to how the land is used. And currently, as I stand, 6 individual structures obscuring the frontage of the cottage, I have a hard time buying that. If that adds the aesthetic nature of the development.
I'll articulate it, I guess similarly, and but just so the board can sort of weigh in. What strikes me, and I think infill is important, and I think creative use of land is important, but this is an afterthought added because of shouldn't have been an afterthought in my view, but an afterthought because of market demands. Okay, that's all right, but my concern is how does this, looking back to the HDR, the regulations protect the existing character and maintain the district's traditional settlement patterns and residents' quality of life. This layout strikes me as, not that it's fatal, but it strikes me as very incongruous with the traditional settlement pattern just by the fact that there's where these houses are going to be and where the garages are going to be in relation to North Street and the neighbors. That's what I myself am chewing on. So I'd be interested to hear what others think.
Yeah.
Robert, you're on mute.
I would like some more information about what these garages are going to look like. What if somebody wants to build a two-story garage and have a mother-in-law apartment on top of it?
Not gonna happen. The septic system won't allow it.
Or somebody
assuming
wants
that-
to have a workshop on top of it.
No.
I'm assuming that 2 stories would be allowed, but honestly, these are
That wouldn't be a limited common area.
6 24 by 24 garages in the front yards in front of all these cottages is a troublesome aesthetic to me, honestly, and is not in character with the general area, because people don't build big garage structures in the front of their houses. So it is a little of a head scratcher as to what is this going to look like when it's all done.
Have you looked at the site plan? It's a challenging site.
Absolutely, I'm staring at it right now.
Yeah, so, but it's a challenging site, in a perfect world, the garages would be on the west boundary, but that's the lowest part of the property, and it makes no sense to put garages back there. It's too hard to get to.
Yeah,
No, I understand the challenges that you're talking about, but just in terms of organized site development and aesthetics, these structures are not that small, and they are all literally in the fronts of the cottages, and all basically right out there along North Street. Not all of them, not the one right in the back corner, but 5 of the 6 are right out there. And it's just, it at least gives me a head scratcher, Robert. I'm a little worried about what it's going to look like. That's, again, I don't think we can dictate exactly what they're going to look like. That's not our prerogative. But in terms of the plan of the development, it gives me a concern.
So I'm just going to offer my little bit of input. This is I've been looking at this site plan for a long time and trying to find compromise and a middle ground. You've got 2 houses, this structure here and this structure here that are basically completed. It may be a compromise where those 2 would be allowed standalones, and you want to see the remaining 4 incorporated into the footprints of the remaining structures to be built, where they would build their garages into their homes. Something along those lines might be keeping a little more on the aesthetic aspect. It's sort of a halfway between the 2 requests or 2 concerns, where if you meld these 2 and these 2 into their building structures where they're attached garages, it might give you a little more cohesion to what you're concerned with. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah,
Well,
I think.
I agree with that. It's the 6 standalones in the fronts that strikes me as, you may not like what it looks like when it's all done. I know, Robert, you're real concerned about what it looks like, and I'm just a little worried this may not turn out as well as you're hoping.
Well, I guess I'm more optimistic than that, and they're not all right in the front. There's 2 on the north boundary and 2 on the south boundary, and 2 that basically face North Street. And there's also the barn is already there. And they're going to be smaller than the barn. And I did mention in the last meeting that my model for these garages is in the middle of the shed lot down at Livingston's Farm at the corner of 116 and 17. And it's a very attractive 24 by 24 barn. It's got
Yeah, I looked at it. I agree, it's attractive.
But if you wanted to see what I had in mind aesthetically, you could go down there and look at that barn. It's painted red. Forget about the extra storage roof off to the side and forget about the dormer.
Well, the other,
Yeah, I keep, Brenda, go ahead. You haven't spoken yet.
I was just going to say, the other thing is this development is essentially in a gully. You can, if you're driving by on North Street, see it. But you really have to turn your head to get a view of anything besides the barn and the one house that's up there along North Street. We're focusing directly on this, but for the most part, the average person driving by will not see it. You just drive by.
Well, I
Fair
think the
point.
testimony last time was there's going to be some fill to raise up the lower areas.
That's on the southern side.
Yeah. Which is where there's a couple houses.
Right.
So my sense of the difficulty or predicament that we're in here is that, yes, the site has its limitations, but what we're really dealing with is the legacy of the original decision to divide this property up into these little building envelopes and keep all the rest common land, which didn't need to be done. There could have been smaller lots and with setbacks relaxed because it's a PRD, and people could site garages differently. But we've got that legacy before us. It doesn't mean that, as Chris was saying, that changes couldn't be allowed for a revision to the way the lot lines are, the building envelopes are for the other 4 lots. That's certainly possible, but we're struggling, or at least talking about this because of the hand we're dealt, and that hand unnecessarily, now we see unnecessarily limited the ability to place garages, and it didn't need to.
Well, we already have approval for the parking spaces. So we're either going to be looking at cars parked in a parking space, or we're going to be looking at a garage with a car inside the garage. So, in my mind, it's just a question, you talk about aesthetics and the visual impact of the whole thing. Well, yeah, it's 12 buildings instead of 6 buildings, but they're going to be recognized as garages, not as homes. If I could have put them on the side or behind the homes, like you see in most of the homes in the village, traditionally the garage is to one side of the house on a small lot. We just simply didn't have the space to do that because of the topography of the lot.
Well, and your desire to have 6 buildings.
Well,
yeah, I would just point out that these garages are an afterthought. Here we are discussing an afterthought. So there's nothing pro or con about that, but they weren't part of the original proposal. And you have to include the barn, the original barn on there. So there's 13 buildings on the property, 7 outbuildings. One of my questions is, whether that outbuilding could be a garage and then you can get rid of one of the new garages. I wonder, since you haven't sold the house lots, would you, consider having one less house so you could rearrange what's left and make it a little more copacetic, but so it works together. I don't know. There's a lot of options like that, but.
Well, I would consider, or ask you to consider, what happened at the co-housing project. Now that's a very flat piece of land with 100 feet of gravel under it. So they were able to take basically about 2 acres of land where there were 6 living units.
3
And they now have
acres.
14 living units.
3 acres.
Is it 3 acres? So there's 14 living units there, but because the land is flat, they were able to put all the parking behind the houses. Of course, 3 of the houses were already on the road, very close to the sidewalk. We didn't have that option with this property. If the property was flat, then we would have designed everything completely differently, but we just didn't have that option. By zoning 3 acres of land in high density residential, I believe requires 5,000 square feet per living unit. So you could have, theoretically, on 3 acres of land, you could have 12 houses. But
That
you
is
need
correct.
septic capacity, and we lack the septic capacity.
That's right. So it's every site is unique.
Yeah.
And what happened with the co-housing is, all right, what happened there, but this is different.
So Rob and Josh have their hands up. Rob,
ahead.
do you want, Rob?
So I was just taking a look at the materials and it was brought up about model and the original scope of the project and everything else. And the buildings that are shown on the plans now, the houses, as well as the garages, are much larger in scale than the plan that's included with the declaration bylaws. Those are shown as roughly 25 by 35 at the largest, and that model that's included with that packet is 24 by 40 footprint. So these seem to be much larger. And then the addition of the garages as well is much more building on the site in terms from the original scope of the plan. We were talking about that earlier, so I just wanted to note that it seems like it's growing over time.
One of the
Josh?
things, oh yeah, go ahead, Josh. I can't see you.
Rob, thanks for noting that. I thought it was a trick of my eye, but I agree. I think at this time, I'm ready to say that I don't think it's meeting the standard laid out in section 609.1, sentence 2, where it talks about preserving views, natural scenic qualities of open land, and cohesiveness. And then I think it was mentioned earlier by Kevin that there is a housing district aesthetic that you're not meeting. You drive down Maple Street or any other street in Bristol, you'll see that next to a 1.5 story or 2-story building or 1-story building is a garage in the same building plane. You place that garage out front, you're breaking with that traditional aesthetic. So, I mean, I could be convinced that there's a path to acceptance if the garage were clustered and the intent was to open up the use of the land and really encourage and maximize the benefit to both the town and the people who are occupying the site. But I can't accept the plan as it is right now, as it's provided. I have an additional concern, and I don't know if it directly falls under what we're reviewing because it was kind of tossed into the submission, but the light fixture that you provided has a greater cutoff than 15 degrees. And I believe our regulations call for dark sky, which is a 90 degree cutoff. So I would encourage you to find a sight fixture with a timer on it that will dim and go down and respect the neighbor's privacy in terms of light, and also promote dark sky. Middlebury, Vermont is actually a great place to view the stars. So I think that's something that's worth preserving. Thank you.
If as long as lighting is issued, that was another one of my concerns, and I would like to just add to Josh's comments. And the easiest way to summarize Bristol's rules are that the light should stay on the property, and nobody should be able to see a bare bulb, basically, or a light source like a bulb, and they should they should comport with dark skies guidelines. So I did have a series of questions about those lights.
Go ahead.
Just about, how they're going to be mounted. It doesn't look like those heads are adjustable. Looks like the tilt of them would be easily seen unless they were right down on the ground. Maybe even then. Also, the color temperature of those lights is 6,500 Kelvin, which is like incredibly harsh white blue light. And if you look at the AMA, they recommend something more like 3,000 Kelvin. So I don't see a cohesive lighting plan here. I see something less than that. And in a dense packed situation that would be created with this development, were it to reach its build out as shown here, it would be critically important to minimize the impact on the neighbors and the community, to think about whose light is shining in whose eyes and what quality of light that is.
I'm extremely sensitive to light, and the photos that I submitted are the lights that are used at Bristol co-housing. I haven't even seen them on at night, but I'm sure there's many options these days, for solar powered pathway lighting late at night. The original plan that was approved has about 4 driveway lights, just general guidance. I'm all for black sky. I'm all for downcast lights that don't show in other directions. There's places on routes 116 when I drive south from Burlington at night, and people have these large lights on the outside of their garage, and I have to hold my hand up because it really annoys me. And I wonder, why don't they put a shade around that thing so that the light is all downcast instead of coming out of it at a horizontal angle? So I'm very sensitive to that. And I would also point out that, just in passing, that the lot directly across the street from 93 North Street has already been approved for 4 houses between the road and the house that's back in there, the ranch house that's in the back. Forgotten his name now, Mike. But someday there's going to be 4 houses over there as well. In addition to the 6 houses that are on the west side of the street, there's going to be 4 additional houses on the east side of the street. And I think this is a good use and a good concentration of housing in a downtown area rather than just spreading out into the countryside. It's infill versus sprawl. And you're taking 3 acres of land that had 1 living unit on it and putting 6 living units on it. And it's a challenging site. And yeah, there's issues, and yeah, everybody's gonna, everybody who has a chance to say something about it, will probably say, well, I don't like the way the houses are angled, or I don't like this, or I don't like that. But the fact is, because of the site, this is the best plan we could come up with. And as I said earlier, we already have approval for the 6 houses and the parking spaces. And I could consider moving the garages around a little bit, but there's very limited space to move them around.
Have you thought about making them 1-car garages?
I haven't, but I don't think everybody that's going to live there wants a garage. The reason it wasn't in the original plan was because I didn't think it was going to be necessary. And then I had several requests from people that were interested in the project. Am I going to be able to build a garage? So that's why we're having this discussion.
Yeah, Robert,
Kevin said earlier, this is market.
Hold on, Josh. Hold on, Josh. Brenda had a question first. I'm sorry.
I had a question for Kevin. Are we able to go in and change what was already approved in this meeting? Or are we only being asked to approve or disapprove the change, which is the garages? In other words, can we go through and change the lighting, change the position of the houses, maybe change the position of the leach field?
Well, we have conditioning authority. This is a proposed site plan. And we can approve it with conditions, or we can say, no, we don't like it. Well, we have 3 options. We can approve it as is and say, yeah, fine, we approve. We can say, we approve it, but we want, these are the conditions, X, Y, and Z, whatever they are, or we can say, nope, it doesn't fit with the area, whatever the reasons are, and then it's up to the applicant to make changes, substantial enough changes to come back and try and address those concerns. They can always come back if there's a denial. The applicant.
Simply what I'm asking
Go
though
ahead.
is, are we merely discussing the garages, or are we discussing the whole plan anew that was approved earlier? In other words, can we do that?
The application is for garages.
I don't know what you mean.
Okay,
There are 6 houses, it's already approved for 6 houses as is.
And the lighting has been approved.
And now we're being asked to add,
the garages.
allow the addition of 6 additional garages, which is a change.
No, I understand that, but
So,
what I'm
okay.
wondering is this the only thing we're discussing, or are we discussing everything? Because it changes.
I don't know what that means.
In other words, we started to discuss the lighting.
When you say, are we discussing everything? I don't know what that.
Of the houses. In other words, if we are only focusing on the garages, the meeting might be a bit shorter.
Right. So I think where the question comes down from Brenda is that are you okay with the PUD aspect of it, which covers the driveway and the lighting, or are you going to only deal with the site plan, which would be basically the 6 garages? I think that's what your question is. Is that correct, Brenda?
It is, yes.
I think it's important to point
All right,
out. Kevin,
that's helpful.
If I can, Kevin, I think it's important to point out that the application is for the 6 garages. I think that's what's before the board for a decision.
That's right. And it's a site plan amendment, so we get to consider as part of that amendment that the site plan bylaw allows. And if we think that the garages have implications for other things, like say lighting, that's, in my view, it's all fair game. You can't, I don't think we're limited. It's really, do these garages go in or not? And that's all we can think about. That's not how site plan works. Site plan,
Right.
You look at the whole package, and this is making changes. We're entitled to think about, we don't have to, we're entitled to think about how it affects the whole.
Right. So, but my big question, Kevin, is I think from the discussion earlier, the PRD/PUD review based on the bylaws is not what you're going to review tonight. You're going to look at the site plan criteria as what you're going to move on, because the PUD criteria was met by the declaration and the First Amendment. Is that correct, Kevin? Because I think what really, when it comes down to it, the PUD criteria is not applicable because we're not worrying about setbacks and waivers. What you're going to focus on this evening is site plan criteria. They've asked for a site plan modification, and those, I want to say 12, I don't have them in front of me. Whatever the site plan criteria is really what you all should be focusing on. And I think lighting is part of that site plan, driveways, things like that. And all those variables, because the garage has changed the site plan, now come into play. If it falls in site plan criteria, you all should focus on that, not the multiple steps of a PUD criteria. Does that sound correct, Kevin? Oh, no, he stopped moving on my screen. Oh, we lost him completely, I think.
Oh,
Hang on, let's see if I gotta see if I got him back. But does that make sense to the rest of the?
You got to
Oh, he's
repeat
back.
it, Chris. I heard virtually nothing that you said.
Yeah, I all of a sudden I saw that you weren't moving. So I believe that, and maybe I'm wrong, that early on you decided that the PUD portion of the review is not essential. The PUD meets and the PRD stuff, because of the declaration and the amendment, are okay. What you're really focused in on is looking at the site plan criteria. Am I correct or am I incorrect? Oh, you broke up again.
Kevin, do you have to unmute yourself?
No.
No, he called sketchy broadband in Broadview.
Yeah, I think that's the extent of it. Sorry, I'm back now. I could.
So did my two questions make sense? You're really focusing on the site plan, not on the PUD at this point. So your criteria is really the site plan criteria, correct, Kevin?
Well, I mean, I think it does, the site plan actually does effect a revision of the existing permit. There's no way around that. And that's what I was talking about at the first hearing. I think that's fine that it's all before us. You warned it both ways, didn't you?
Correct, because that's what you'd
Yeah,
requested.
so, yeah, that's right. And that's why, because I don't think site plans exist in isolation. And so I'm looking at them as a package.
Okay.
And so the PRD has been revised by the declarations and the bylaws in a way we now understand, and we can approve that. That's a change of what the existing permit is, and that's perfectly fine. And along with that, we consider the change of the layout, which is the site plan. And so everything under site plan review and PRD is fair game, but so I think it's both, and we should just think about it as, all right, here's a request to change up this development to include 6 individual garages that will be on common land, but be limited common elements, which means their use is tied to a particular unit, and decide if it requires or needs of further conditions because of concerns the board collectively has with respect to screening or things like that, or that's
Kevin,
how we're looking at it.
I just focus this for a minute on what I'm sure Robert and maybe Kevin are thinking. I think you're absolutely right that we can condition a site plan amendment of any kind. If Robert just said, this is getting too frustrating for me, I don't want to, I'll skip the garages. I'm just going to build the PRD that was approved before with the site plan, and admittedly it was a different ordinance. I think he could just walk away and just say, I'm just going to build what I had before. He's going to stick strictly within that approval, though. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think, Robert, you need to understand that. But the point is that once we get the garages, six more buildings on there does change things a lot, and you're kind of like wide open for us talking about the whole site plan. I think that's the reality of where we are right now.
And it's worth noting, it's not just the 2-car garages, but that means that each living unit gets 50%, a third parking spot, because if you notice, there's an outside parking spot as well as the 2. So on the original plan, there were 2 parking spots per housing unit, and now there's 3.
Maybe Robert can clarify that for me, but I think that were there only 2 spots before, or were there 3 before, and now 2 of them are being covered by the garage? I couldn't tell.
You're muted, Robert. There you go.
The original plan, can you hear me?
Yes.
The original plan had 2 parking spaces per house. And I spoke to Chris Purley about this a couple of years ago and said, you know, I'm concerned about the number of parking spaces because it's quite possible that 2 retired people move into one of these houses and they have 2 cars. Where are their guests going to park? So maybe we should have 3 parking spaces. And he told me that he could approve that administratively. So we've had 3 parking spaces per unit in the plan now for a couple of years. So in my mind, a 2-car garage and an extra parking space is not more parking spaces.
I love Chris dearly, but I'm not so sure that's the right, that many additional parking spaces administratively.
Well, you know,
That's been
this is only
problematic.
administrator. I'm not, you know, I certainly am not the person who's capable, qualified to answer that question. Frankly, I thought when I went to Chris and told him that I wanted to get permission to build 6 garages, that he was just going to approve it. I didn't realize that, you know, we were going to have all these meetings and generate all this discussion. And so I'm fine with that. You know, that's the way the process works. So, you know, in my mind, we have approval for 6 2-bedroom homes on 3 acres of land. We're asking for an adjustment to build 6 auxiliary buildings, 2-car garages, 1 to go with each lot. And, you know, I think that's all you really have to consider.
So back to your question, Tom, the parking spaces are not increasing. For every garage, it's a 2-bay garage. Those were 2 allocated parking spaces originally.
But what Robert said, did administratively you gave an additional parking space to each house? Since when they got approved by.
Yeah, I'm looking at the original site plans right now. I'm trying to pull them up.
I don't think
Looks
any of
like
the
2 to
plans
me.
look like 3.
2 per.
Yeah, I agree with Robert's concern about visitor parking and so on, but you know, like with a PUD, I would have put that visitor parking in one little clustered spot off somewhere else. But I don't know. I think we've all expressed this doesn't feel like a tight little community like Robert originally came up with all these freestanding buildings in the front. I kind of like, you know, your approach, Chris's approach to, could we do a little better here? You know, in terms of making this look more like, you know, like the housing stock that surrounds it.
I don't think it's that different. And I think it's a good use of the lot. And I've had a lot of people who are interested in buying these lots because they want to live in a little development like this. So I think it's a very positive thing for the village of Bristol, personally.
Robert.
I agree with the use of the lot, and I agree with that this kind of use is great. It's the 6 24 by 24 foot structures in front of the cottages that I just, you know, I'm never going to feel real good about that aesthetically. That just feels a little like a lot of buildings clustered in pretty tight.
Well,
I think long building in the front yard.
You have to be more open-minded than that. You know, I remember there was a huge uproar in Middlebury when Middlebury South Village was built, and that giant concrete wall that's on the edge of the bank down there now, People's United Bank, used to be the Chittenden. It looked very jarring when it was built. It looked really out of place. It looked like, what the heck is this? The Great Wall of Middlebury. You go by there now, it's been there for 10 years. You don't even notice it. It blends right in. They put a bunch of plantings in front of it, and it's not as shocking as it was when it was first built. And I think the same thing will happen with this community. Once the vegetation gets fleshed out, more trees are planted, it'll fit right in perfectly with the village, but it does take time. When it's first built or you first look at it, you go, whoa, that's not exactly, what the rest of the village looks like. But I think this is a wonderful asset for the village. And it's also a wonderful asset for the tax base of the town. Where you take 6 homes, all taxed individually instead of 1 home taxed on 3 acres of land. So I think it has a lot of positive side effects. And yeah, when it's first built and the garages, if they're built or not, this is just permission to build garages. Some people I've talked to, they don't care about garages. Some people say, well, can I build a carport? I don't know. I have to ask the DRB if you can build a carport. But I think when it's all done and the dust is settled and the trees that are around, we saved as many trees as possible. And I have new trees coming next week, some red maples, and I have some other trees already planted out there that had to be dug up and moved. But, in 5 or 10 years, it's going to be an asset.
What if we said you could build up to 3 of them? Since you said a lot of people don't want them anyway.
You're kind of cherry picking this thing to death. It's just, you're overthinking it. It's just, I understand what you're saying. And, I understand that 12 buildings have more visual impact than 6 buildings. But I think when it's all said and done, it's going to be very attractive and it's going to be an asset for the village in many ways that I've already said.
It's 13 buildings.
That's why I think you should approve it. And maybe everyone won't build a village. We just got a contract on the house that was built 1.5 years ago, cash offer, no contingencies, and no request for a garage. So as far as I know, the person who's buying that house in 2 weeks for all cash is not going to build a garage. He didn't ask about it. He didn't think about it. So it's quite possible that none of these garages will be built. The people who sparked this conversation had the house under contract for 2 months. They've gone away. They're looking elsewhere now. That's fine with me. There's plenty of other people that are interested in this project. So, the other house that's under construction and almost completely roughed out anyway, going to belong to a woman named Deb Farnham. She said, yeah, well, I might want to have a garage. And that's the one that's the farthest west on the north boundary, the farthest away from the road. The people who have the house have the lot already bought and probably aren't going to build for 2 years on the south side. They're the ones who said, well, we might want a carport, maybe one of those solar carports with the solar panels on the roof and just a place so that we don't have a lot of snow in our car in the wintertime and a lot of hot sun shining on it in the summertime. So I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen. We're just asking for permission to build these structures. And as Chris has said, they'll have to get a building permit from him and they'll have to pass his aesthetic test in addition to mine. So,
Well, he doesn't have an aesthetic test.
What?
He doesn't get to do an aesthetic test.
Well, I will because I'm very concerned about aesthetics. And I don't want to build a project. I plan on living here. We've saved one of these lots for ourselves, the one on the south side of the barn. It's the only one left. And, we're pretty well set up here in Lincoln, but I assume that in another 10 or 15 years, if we're still alive, the idea of living in town is going to be a whole lot more attractive than living up on the hill. Just because the drive to the supermarket and the doctor's office and the drugstore is a lot shorter. And, this is a beautiful place, age in place, because it's all flat. Nice little grid of streets, real easy to ride your electric scooter down the sidewalk, to pick up your groceries or whatever. So I don't want to build something that I'm not going to be proud of, or that I'm going to think, oh my God, what did I do? What an ugly scene. I'm going to make sure that this is attractive. And, so it's possible that even
knowing you have absolute confidence in that part of it. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I hear you.
I mean, I've been
Robert,
steering the ship on this whole thing for 8 years, and I'm gonna continue to, stay close to it and make sure that, it doesn't go off the rails.
Robert, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Just following up on what Chris was alluding to earlier, is there, I don't know the topography well enough with where these garages are proposed, but on any of the lots, is there the ability to attach a garage to the house? I'm hearing the board's concern.
Yeah. Well, it's actually, there's a design for the house. It's, if you get your pointer out there, yeah, to the left, the next one to the left there, Chris. Yeah, that one. That house is under design. That lot's been purchased. And Stuart Hamilton is working on a design, and they want a garage that's roughly integrated with their house. The first design they showed me would fit in the 60 by 45 foot building envelope. Stuart decided he didn't like that design very well. So he's changing it around, and he showed it to me, and I said, well, that's not going to work because that garage is outside. Part of that garage that you now have attached to the house is outside the building envelope. So to build that, you're going to have to wait to see if we can get approval for these 6 garages. But it is possible.
Robert,
and there are several examples in the area of garages that are integrated into the building structure. So it's one building, not 2 separate buildings.
So Robert, just for clarity, if this is the northwest, sorry, my bad. I've got this thing upside down. It throws me off every time. The northwest property is the only house that is that's under construction that might in the future want a garage.
That's what she's mentioned to me here.
Yeah, so if the other 5 houses, house 1, I'm going to call, which is the one that's already done next to the barn, doesn't want a garage, doesn't care. If they want to do it, they have to come to the board. They'll figure that out on their own. If tonight, if they were to approve this garage right here for this northwest house, and asked that the others incorporate a garage into theirs, would that be a suitable option for you and not request standalone structures? And that any homeowner that wanted to build a standalone garage would come in as a one-off and individually have to get approval from the board.
Well, originally, that's what I was going to do, Chris. And then it was suggested that it might be better to get, rather than coming for each additional garage, to come for permission for 6 garages. So then if somebody wanted to build one, all they would have to do is get a building permit. The thing I will say today is, go up to where the barn is. Go put your pointer, Chris, where the barn is there. Yeah, right there. So if we have a house, the lot next to that on the south side, which is up, if we build a house there, it's quite possible that we will use the barn as our garage. So then we'd be talking about 5 garages instead of 6 garages. Is that any?
And again,
we'd be talking about permission for 5 garages instead of 6.
And omit this garage right here.
Yeah. So is that any easier for the board to swallow? That we could approve the potential building of 5 garages instead of.
And you said this buyer currently for this existing structure?
They have the previous contract had a clause, a condition that they be able to build a garage.
Right.
The person who now has signed a contract to buy that house has said nothing about a garage.
So if you omitted this garage, which is I personally is one of the bigger garages I have an issue with, but it has nothing to do with this. But if you omitted this garage and this garage from your site plan, it might make it a little less now your road, the ones that are most
Closest to the
Visible
north.
from the street.
yeah, affecting the streetscape now are mitigated. This is the only one that's a little quirky, but that might be workable. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And I know Josh had a question, so I'll step off.
Yeah, I think that I'm ready to move to make a resolution on this, but to elaborate on the most recent conversation, I actually prefer the configuration of the garages to the south and would encourage Robert to expand on that concept. The garages to the north, I have the largest issue with in terms of blocking the frontage to the house. That is completely inconsistent with the typology here in Bristol. And look, this is not about personal opinion, and I'd like to move this conversation off of personal opinion. These are measurable things. You could come into the board with images of houses with garages in the front in the town of Bristol and convince us otherwise. But I think you would find the vast majority of the housing stock in Bristol is very consistent in terms of the lot layout. And that's, I think, where I'm getting hung up in terms of the language of the regulations. And so that's why I can't move forward on this. And I think that, I'd like to see something on paper as a real proposal versus modifying it verbally during this meeting.
Rob, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so if we're talking about site plan review, handling this, then we would be talking about the standards of, in the HDR, it's 20 feet behind the principal for an accessory building. And this was a pre-existing PRD, so is that why we're not talking about that standard at all in the citing of those?
Yeah, so under current standards, you have to put an accessory building behind the front corner of a house. And that's where it gets wonky. Yeah, I agree with you, Rob. That is a question that the board needs to look at.
Kevin, are you with us?
That's what I'm wondering. I think we might have lost our chair. I'm looking right now. Oh, he's muted. Kevin, you're muted.
Well, I'm back. So the answer to Rob, thank you. The answer to Rob's question is, that's exactly right. Because we are in the construct of operating in the construct of a PRD/PUD, those yard setbacks and layouts that apply to the district as a whole get eliminated or relaxed, or it's the whole concept is to not be constrained by those particular restrictions and do something else with clustering or layout to improve flexibility. So are there any more questions from any board member that I can't see everybody, so maybe Chris, if you can see
I have a
somebody.
request that we get rid of the site plan here so we can see everybody.
Yeah.
So I know who's speaking. I have the site plans in front of me, so.
Yeah, okay, that's a good idea. So
I think Chris left it. Chris,
I'm back. I apologize.
Cal suggested you get rid of the site plan at this point. I think that would be helpful.
I can do that.
There you go. There you go. So I appreciate the inquiries about how about if you change this or that, and that's okay to a point. But ultimately, the application before us is for these 6 standalone garages as limited common elements. And we have to vote on that with or without conditions. We have to vote on what the application is. If the board were to deny the amendment, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, if the board were to deny the amendment, then the applicant is free to come back with something different to try to address, in an effort to address the board's concerns. So let me just explain briefly about successive application doctrine. It's part of zoning. And zoning doesn't allow just a second bite at the apple with some, cosmetic change or some change that's inconsequential. But an applicant does have the ability to make revisions in response to previous board action or concerns and submit a different application in an effort to get approval. So you can't come back with essentially the same application, because that would be an effort to do something other than appeal a decision if you don't like it. So if we were to deny, then the applicant has heard concerns and can propose something different to see if that would address the board's concerns. So there's all kinds of possibilities depending on what the board decides. Does anybody on the board have any additional questions? I can't see anybody anymore, so Chris, you call on them if you can see them.
I'm looking.
Okay. Does Mr. Fuller, do you have anything further to add?
So, yeah, I have 2 questions. I asked at the last meeting if someone came up with a house plan that had a garage that was integrated as part of the primary residence and it fit in the building envelope, the 60 by 40 foot building envelope, then they would not need any special approval to build that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, I think that's right. Whether you would need to do something with your documents is meaning the declaration, the bylaws, that's up for you and Kevin Brennan to figure out. But as I understand the existing approval, it's that there's this footprint within which someone can build a house of within which someone can build. So if you're in the footprint, I think that's probably fine.
That is, yeah, that's how I interpret it as well, Kevin.
So my
I
other
would also add to that, I think you could use the barn that exists in the site plan now as a garage without any additional approval too. Subject again to your own documents, as long as your documents don't say you can't.
So my other question to the board is, what about solar carports? The kind of thing that Suncommon advertises? A nice
we don't have
post and beam structure with a bunch of solar panels on top of it?
That becomes a unique jurisdiction issue between the Public Utility Commission, but I'll let Kevin speak to that.
Yeah, towns have limited authority, Robert, with respect to regulating renewable energy, particularly solar. But towns can enact siting requirements and screening requirements and things of that nature, particular to solar, but it can't, those restrictions or the regulations can't treat solar differently than other commercial or industrial type uses. So for better or worse, Bristol has not seen fit to enact anything particular to solar.
Well, they actually did. I mean, they enacted a.
You do?
Yeah. So when the town plan was enacted, approved recently, we have an enhanced energy plan now. And Rob actually can speak to that more than I can.
Yeah, but, well, town plan is not a regulation. I'm talking about regulations.
Oh, no, from a zoning standpoint or regulation standpoint, no. But we did enact a enhanced energy plan that changes the
Right,
scope
no,
and
I
scale a
get,
little bit.
I get that, but town plans are not enforceable. So the town plan gives the planning commission the opportunity to draft bylaws or bylaws, or and if the town adopts them, they adopt them. But if the planning commission doesn't do that, there are no tools. And so right now, Bristol doesn't have any regulatory authority over solar structures.
No, we treat them as an accessory structure.
My question is, if someone builds one of these houses and wants to put a carport, I'm talking about what I mentioned already, like a
Right.
solar panel, attractive post and beam kind of carport over their parking space, are they going to need DRB approval to do that?
I would think so, yeah.
Does anybody know?
I do not have a definitive answer.
I've lost the hypothetical. If you're building within the footprint and it's part of the structure, the house, I don't think you do.
No,
Robert's
asking if he can use the solar panel as a cover for the cars and park the cars under the solar panel.
In the
In
park.
a sense, change the vernacular or the vocabulary from garage structure to solar panel structure that he's using to shelter the garages, the cars.
It's solar
Correct, Robert?
carport is really what it.
It's still.
Yeah, but well, so it's I won't lie, it's super gray because you can, if you build a solar array, the PUC per our standards has authority over it. If they approve it and it's 12 feet in the air and you can park your car on it,
I disagree, Chris, because it's changing the use as soon as you use it to park a car permanently underneath it.
well,
From a
well,
utility to.
I know you are, and that's why I keep saying it's gray. It's, Robert, the answer is I would not say yes tonight and under any circumstances to say that that was acceptable.
Nor, and I'm going to exert chair authority here. I'm not, we're not going down this road anymore. Our job, we don't sit here and issue advisory opinions about what may or may happen and things that are or not before us. We're not going to do it. And
Thank you.
And we're moving on. So does anybody have a motion?
I have a motion.
Go ahead.
Approve 4 garages, the 3 garages on the north side of the
Hold
property.
on, who's speaking?
It's Robert.
You don't make motions, Mr. Fuller. Does anybody on the board have a motion?
Motion to deny the site plan change of 6 garages as presented tonight.
Who was that? I can't see.
Josh.
Okay, Josh, does anybody second Josh's motion?
I'll second it.
Who was that?
That was John.
Okay, any debate among the board members? Just announce yourself and go ahead, or Chris call on them because I can't see anybody anymore.
Yeah, Chris,
This is Ted.
can I make a comment? I think that if I was to vote, to approve these garages, I would only vote to approve 3. I would eliminate the 2 on the south side, and I would eliminate the one on the north side that's closest to North Street. That's my opinion.
Okay, but the proposal before
I
us. so we're gonna-
understand that.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Any other comments from the board?
Question, we either have to vote for 6 or none.
Correct. We're voting on the proposal. We have an application before us.
And if we
But
vote,
we,
and if we vote no, we're voting for the garages, right?
No. If we vote no, the existing
No,
plan
I mean,
stays as is.
Could it be, could you repeat the motion then? I misunderstood.
the
Vote,
motion is to deny the garages.
The motion is to deny this proposed site plan amendment to add 6 garages as set forth on the plan.
And so if you vote no, you're voting not to deny the,
No, if we vote no, the permit amendment fails.
but then we're not voting to deny.
You are, that's the motion is, do we approve the
So,
application or do we deny it?
okay, but no, but okay, can you read, this is what I meant. I understood that the motion was to vote to deny, which is a negative motion, which is always confusing. Can you repeat the motion?
I don't,
Kevin?
Brenda's making an excellent English teacher distinction. She's basically saying that yes to deny, what is really what she's saying. Yes to deny, or essentially we're voting to deny or not deny.
okay.
In other words, Kevin, could you repeat the motion that you have there?
Actually, hey Peggy, I'm gonna throw you under the bus here. Your first meeting, you're on mute, but no, you're still muted. There we go.
Hi, Joshua moved to deny the proposal as presented. Moyers seconded. So the vote is
Right.
to yes, we all deny, or no, we don't, or abstain.
Thank you.
All right, is everyone clear? So thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Brenda. The motion is to deny. I think I've got this right, the way it's phrased, but to deny the application for 6 garages. So if we vote to deny, we vote yes, we're denying. Does everybody understand?
Correct.
Do you agree, Brenda?
Oh, yeah, I just was.
All right, no, with that was a good clarification. I just want everybody to understand that if with the motion on the table, and it's perfectly acceptable to be done this way, if you vote yes, you're voting to deny the application. If you vote no, you're not denying it, but then there would have to be another motion to do something else. Any further questions or comments regarding the motion on the floor?
Yeah, John Moyers here. I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna support this vote. Robert, it's not about the desirability of what you're trying to do there. It's about how you're executing it, and I think it can be done better.
Any other?
And appreciating the chair's admonition that it's not our job to give advice, it's to vote on what's before us. But especially since, Robert, you showed some flexibility, consistent with what Ted said before, I'm amenable to a halfway solution here. If you want to come back with something, but I am going to vote to deny as well.
Any other comments from the board? Chris, do you see anyone?
No, I think if anyone wants to make another comment, please raise your hand. No movement on the screen, so please move forward.
All right, then we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor of denying the motion by voting yes, raise your hands and I'm voting, since you can't see me, I am voting in favor of the motion to deny the application.
So per show of hands, I'm looking at everyone. Brenda, did you have a hand up or not? I'm sorry, I missed you.
I did not.
Okay,
Okay.
I did not think so. I just want to confirm that
All
for
right.
Peggy.
Okay, and all those in favor of denying the motion, and therefore the application would still be alive, raise your hand.
And I have one, and that is Brenda at this point. So,
Any abstentions?
no hands are raised.
All right, so the motion carries. The application is denied. Mr. Fuller, you've heard a lot of the concerns. I encourage you to think about how you might, if you're of a mind to, how you might revise things to alleviate some of the board's concerns regarding how this property is laid out, or to limit the proposal to fewer garages. But those choices are up to you, and you're free to make a different application if you make a substantial change, which shouldn't be hard to do. So when's our next meeting, Chris?
I don't mute. Sorry for the delay.
That's okay.
2 weeks, and you have at a minimum a hearing for a conditional use and preliminary and possible final approval for the Stony Hill property. And I may have 2 more applications for sketch plan for you.
All right, well, okay, so is there any other, we've gone through everything on our agenda, correct?
That is correct. The only thing left is adjournment.
Does any other business from the board?
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
John Moyers here. At our organizational meeting, we began to formulate some of the document that sort of guides our organization. And I don't know if we ever adopted that or if we need to adopt that.
Yeah, I sent around a summary that, I don't know, I hope you got it, John, that cited the various authorities that become relevant, in the bylaws and in the statutes. And I think the only other thing, I think we decided at the organizational meeting was to elect the chair and the vice chair annually, and that was it.
But we're not required to pass that some sort of, I'm at a loss for the words, what we're calling those off.
Procedural requirements?
Procedural requirements. That's not something that we're.
No,
we decided to use the summary that Kevin gave us, which is the law. Rather than re-summarize, they just use that, and I really thank Kevin for doing what he did and support that procedure, not adopting anything further.
Yeah, cool. That's good. I just was unclear if that was a piece of.
No, that was a good question. We're not required to do anything more than we've done.
All right, good.
And more importantly, you guys are actually ruled by state statute more than you would be anything would pass. So,
all right,
it is the correct document.
Yeah. Okay.
I have one other issue I'd like to bring up.
Okay.
There's a major development proposed for the Cane Hill across the river south of town, 2.2 megawatt solar project. And I've been reading through their Public Utility Commission filings, and it seems like a very good project to me, with the caveat that I haven't read everything real closely. But as far as I've gone, it looks pretty interesting and provocative and good. But it is 2 projects. They're asking the PUC to review them as one, but technically it's 2, and I just wonder if there's a role for the DRB in any of this, because one of the projects is the actual racks that hold all the solar panels and the inverters and the grid tie. But the other part of it is a storage facility, a large battery storage facility. And that's a separate project.
Right.
So the question is
Yeah.
whether we want to, my question is whether we want or need to have a role in that, in any way to preserve our ability to have roles in the future that way.
Yeah, the answer is, for better or worse, no, we don't. It's called a Section 248 proceeding, is where the certificate of public good comes out of the PUC. Towns have a role, but it's the select board who has the role, not DRBs. And the first criteria is under consideration for the PUC is the project consistent with orderly development in the region and in the town? And that's where the select board gets to weigh in and cite things like the town plan and town, if there were any town standards, the town itself could take a position and participate in the process. Other than that, you're left with those who adjoiners, people who are adjoin the property, or others who can show a sufficient, they're automatically in as interested parties. They've got to ask to be in, but they come in automatically. And if you're not an adjoiner, you can petition to be allowed to participate and cite your reasons why. And many times groups other than adjoiners are allowed to participate, but they've got to show some kind of interest. But as the DRB, nope, we don't have any role. It's just the town through its select board.
Is that for generating?
Yeah, well, it's for anything. It's for anything that requires PUC approval. And I imagine that if the storage facility is part of the project, it's all PUC.
Yeah,
so 2 projects.
Right, so my conversations with both the developer and the PUC has been, it falls under the PUC authority at this point.
All right, thank you.
So I just wanted to make a comment. I just wanted to, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I just wanted to say thank you to all of you on the board for, your dedication to the town, because I know what it's like to serve on these kind of boards. And, I was on the school board for 5 years, and I have some understanding of what boards are like. So I just wanted to thank you for your dedication to the town and trying to keep everything sorted.
Thank you, Mr. Fuller.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay,
Thank you, Robert.
thank you. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you, folks.
I have a question, Chris,
Yep.
please. Have you checked on the camp that some folks believe has been built in the floodplain of the New Haven River? The last I spoke to you, Chris, about it, you said you were waiting for access because of snow.
Yeah, so I won't lie to you, between this, all of your hearings and everything else, I've been swamped. I know that the camp you're talking about, it's on the opposite side of across the river from Randy Sargent's welding or fabrication shop. And I'm hoping to be out there in the next month to discuss it and look at it. So
Okay.
it's on my radar. I'm not gonna lie, but it's mid-tier on the radar right now. Your agenda right now is pretty busy, so it's sucked me in for a while. So
Okay,
Okay.
10 o'clock,
Okay.
folks. Let's call it a night.
Okay.
thank you all very
We're
much.
adjourned.
Thank you, Peggy, for your first night.
Thanks, Peggy.
Thank you.
And Peggy can let us know tomorrow whether will continue to serve as the secretary.
I'll let you know now.
Yeah.
Because if she doesn't, this ruins it for the planning commission too. And it makes my life really challenging, so.
And now, after all this time, all of a sudden the faces come back. Unbelievable.
I know.
Thank you all. Have a great night all. We'll see you on.
Good night all. Thanks, board.
Night.
Bye.
Good night all.